kind of carrying on the theme indirectly with Tim because the injury was sustained against Nottingham Forest. As you said at the start, we won 2-1. What's your thoughts on the Nottingham Forest game, man?
It's a bit of both. I'm excited at the same time because I can see that he's trying new things out. And there's signs of what it could be, but I want a lot more. I want a lot more going forwards. Defensively, you can say we improve and stuff, and we will improve. But going forward, we've got way too good players not to be more aggressive and make things happen. The fact that we didn't make a single big opportunity, I think is a bit of an annoying thing. It's not really a concern because I know we've got the players for it, but it's a bit annoying because I think the players can do more. And you look at the likes of Kai Havertz, and I think, I've seen a lot of mixed reactions. I can see what he offers us. I can see what Arteta wants from him as well. But what I want from Havertz now is him to be a bit more aggressive. Be decisive with the ball. You get the ball into so many nice areas, make something happen in that type of space. And I look at him in a sense of his movement's amazing, but sometimes I don't think he's vocal enough because he makes so many good runs, and sometimes maybe the players don't hear him. But I think it's a matter of chemistry because once you see that other players understand his game, he'll be found more often and he'll maximise those chances. And I just want to see, you look at Kevin De Bruyne. Every time he gets to the ball, he's got purpose behind it. And I want to see Odegaard and Havertz have that similar type of impact, or at least try to do that type of thing.
What do you make of Havertz based on these two games? Pre-season, everyone can have their opinions, but he played obviously in the Community Shield. He's played today. You kind of mentioned that he's not vocal. Like, what have you made of Havertz so far, and why don't you think he's vocal? Is it a fact of he's trying to get to grips with his new teammates? Do you think that's just him? Do you think he hasn't got that in him? Do you think that's just not him, really?
It's a mix. So I think naturally he's a character who comes across very calm. Bit like Mesut Ozil. You can see it in the way he plays, and I think that confuses fans because they see he's got that natural posture. He's very calm. He's like, yeah, come on, I'm that guy. Fact. Sometimes they think he's lazy, and he's not lazy. He's always working hard.
Very much an English thing that in this game. You're right.
Mikel Arteta would have not signed a lazy player. I'm sorry. He does not spend £65 million on a lazy player. He works hard. And he's very good at blocking lanes, intercepting balls, and we saw it against Forest. In terms of second balls as well, winning those duels and stuff. He's good at that type of stuff. So I like that, and I think what I've made of it is, I see it. I see what Mikel Arteta sees. And it's not like I see him as like a world-class performances and I think he's been amazing. But I see what he could offer. I see that in that Forest game, he's always in between the lines. He's always making those runs. And I think what we saw in the second half, that diamond where, Rice goes into the final third, Havertz plays as number 10, Odegaard drops off. That's the long-term plan. And I think once you see, Nketiah and Jesus are very good strikers, but I think the long-term plan for Arsenal is to have a proper number 9 as well. And I think alongside that, Havertz could be, I think with Havertz, it's more about ratings. And the way Havertz gets ratings if he starts scoring goals. And he will score goals, by the way. He gets into way too many good positions.
Needs to get shooting boots on, though. You're right. He does get into the areas. Just needs to learn how to finish. But Odegaard, Martinelli, even Granit Xhaka last season, Arteta has shown that he could do that. Do you actually think Havertz will win every Arsenal fan's heart? Because as you kind of said, he's a divisive figure. There's a bit of untapped potential. Is he a striker? Is he a midfielder? He's obviously got the Chelsea staff. I'm pretty sure I speak for everybody apart from Mikel Arteta, which he's the man with the plan. When we was talking about central mid options or improvements, maybe too many people didn't know too much about Timber, but they can see what he brings if they just look on YouTube. Evidently, Declan Rice. I don't think there's anybody that has anything bad to say, maybe the price tag, but Havertz is a device. Do you think he'll ever win fans over? Because you mentioned Mesut Ozil. That was a man who, he was lit. I know he's lit. I think even the haters know he's lit. And, he did sign for us and end the trophy drought. But I wouldn't say he's convinced every Arsenal fan.
Look, it's a very good way to win fans over, and that's put in good performances. The prime example is Granit Xhaka. He booed the fans, or, he said something to the fans didn't like, he got booed off, stripped off the captain's armband. But he put in good performances. And when you put in good performances, fans have no choice but to like you. So it's simple with Havertz. I think it's a matter of once he starts scoring those goals, I think he will score those goals. And I think he will be one of Arsenal's top goal scorers this season because his movement's just so good. And, I'm not saying he's an amazing finisher, but having seen Martin Odegaard become a 15-goal season midfielder and coming into Arsenal, he was never that. Havertz has proven he can score goals before at Chelsea and more by Leverkusen. So he's got the potential. It's just about confidence. Confidence is very important. I think when you think about your own selves and lives, when you're confident in life, everything just clicks into place. Everything's flow state. You know what you're doing. And once Havertz gains that confidence by a few goals, you can just see that what he'll do. But I think every single game I'm seeing him play on an Arsenal shirt, I can see more and more of him fitting in, of him improving, learning, and I think learning his teammates and vice versa as well. So I think he'll come good.
I think you're bang on there with learning your teammates. I think in terms of understanding their role and stuff, I'd say out of the 3 signings, I think Timber's hit it off immediately. I think Rice is there, but you can see Rice is still learning like the other elements of the game, affecting the game in the opponent's half. Probably unfortunate not to score in his debut, but he's getting there. And I think Havertz fits in. It's just a case of finding that balance of fitting in and now standing out. As you said, and as I said when he actually signed for the club, there's evidently a lot of frustrations with Havertz. You can see why he's a divisive player, but he makes good runs. He's intelligent. He gets into the area. As I just said, I think he needs to find his shooting boots, but he is an intelligent player, and I'm prepared to give Mikel Arteta the luxury of, just letting the man bed in. And I do want Havertz, and I think he has come here with a sense of urgency, because obviously he's not really unearthed his full potential. You've kind of been in a rebuild at Chelsea. You've been considered damaged goods. You're staying in London. You're more or less a veteran player coming into this system. You've won Champions League. As you said, you've been about at Leverkusen. You play for your country. I look at him to the same way I look at when Odegaard walked in, or Benjamin White and Ramsdale, and that in the face of it, you're quote unquote inexperienced, but there's a good foundation of experience that you lot can spread to the rest of the team. Where do you think he ends up though? Like, because Arteta, for me, he exclusively talks about him as a midfielder, but with every time he talks about midfielder, he talks about his versatility. He said he can play on the right. Obviously, I won't say it took us by surprise, but if you go back to last week, or the week before, in the build-up to this Man City game, it was all Trossard already. He played Havertz and he did quite well. Where do you think he ends up? Because for me personally, I think he's a centre mid, but I think for Havertz right now, it's a case of, if you're going to be a striker, if you're going to be a centre mid, wherever you're going to play, lock down one role first, and then you're able to be adaptable. Like you can evidently see with Timber, you're a right back, so that's centre half, you can play left back. The same goes for Tomiyasu, and forcing it with Odegaard in the 8 and the 10. So where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think he's at 8-10, and I think where we see him, in the second half against Forest is where he's going to play. And I think that's why we signed Declan Rice, is because he's just so good defensively. And I think Arteta wants 5 top defensive players ahead of his goalkeeper to just be, top 1v1, great transition control. And that gives you the ability to have Odegaard and Havertz. And because they both work hard as well, they're never going to be a liability defensively. They're going to always work hard. They're always going to track back. So it's a matter of, I think he will be a number 8. He'll be the arriving there into the box, playing behind a proper striker, and just, feeding off kind of like little poaching goals and stuff. And you think about the goal he scored against Barcelona, that type of goal there. You look at his movement for Edin Nketiah's goal. Nketiah scored the goal, but Havertz he's there. Havertz was on his own. No other Arsenal player was there, but Havertz just very intelligent player. And I think fans will only see that once you start scoring goals, because fans see numbers. That's what they see. Fans want to see numbers, and when you not even just
that, man. They see Sofa score ratings, as we know. Like, I'm pretty sure.
Score ratings.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure you was at the game, or you watched the game, and it's like, I don't know about you, but sometimes you'll watch a match and you'll go on social media, and obviously everyone's allowed their opinion. Yeah. But you're like, are you watching the game, or are you watching it with vested agendas, or are you watching 30-second disaster cast clips and that, man?
Yeah, I think some fans need to understand this as well, that there's different perspectives, and when you understand that, you start to realize, okay, he has that, but he's seeing it different to how I'm seeing it. And I think the most important perspective is Mikel Arteta's. And the fact that he starts Havertz, and I think he started every single game for Arsenal since signing, he sees something, and there's a reason behind that.
Do you think we have enough in midfield?
I think so. I think, maybe you could add another profile that can play, if Havertz isn't playing well in that role, have more of a Xhaka type of player. You could play Rice there, of course, but I would like to have, the dream would have been Caicedo. I think would have been amazing in that position.
Don't mention his name.
That sort of profile would have been nice, I think. And I think that's what we're also still wanting as well. But that's like an ideal world. And sometimes in the transfer market, those players aren't there. And it's rather than go and panic and just signing any player that can play there, you wait for the right opportunity, like Declan Rice, for example, and then sign the right player there. But that's probably the next thing in midfield I want to add. But apart from that, there's so many different profiles. Partey can play there, Rice can play there. You've got Jorginho as a bit of experience. El Neni is just the 4th, 5th choice now. Ben White, I think, can maybe play there in the future. I think Timber
maybe
can
even potentially Timber if he never,
Zinchenko. Zinchenko, what he does so well is, I don't know if he's got potential to break into the box and play as an 8. But he's got so much of what I want from an 8 as well. Maybe something we see more often this season. Maybe keep an eye on it.
And then obviously, as much as I agree with you, I would want another midfielder. I think one more body and I'd be fine. I'm just wary of, I'm all for Rice or Partey as the lone 6 to kind of chaperone, and then rotating 8s of Odegaard, Fabio Vieira, Havertz, Smith Rowe, so on and so forth. And obviously for me, the first choice trio should be Partey, Rice and Odegaard. I just feel we need one more, whether that's another number 6 or, like you said, someone that kind of does the Xhaka thing, someone that, because Havertz can play in midfield, but he's almost like an experiment. We have to kind of mold him. Obviously if we sign someone, we're not going to get the Tchouaménis and them kind of man there, but if we could sign someone that's a bit raw, but they kind of are a centre mid out and out, I think we'd be cooking. I just think we're a bit short, a bit like Liverpool, really, in that Liverpool just need a 6 or 2 and they're kind of set there. I think one more midfield body, it is what it is. But I do think naturally in the next couple of years, I think we'll look to sign another one, because I don't think El Nene, Jorginho or Partey are going to necessarily be here forever. So you're fully right. What have you made on Declan Rice? Because for me personally, every game he plays, you can see him getting better. I do think people think just because you signed for 105 million, you got the experience that he needs to get 1 million goals, 1 million assists, 10 out of 10 game. You can evidently see somebody that is learning. I think he's starting to arrive in the box. He's actually making them kind of Martinelli runs. I do think, not that he's playing within himself, because I know he's been playing with a knock, but he's got ball playing ability. Like, he can hit a crossfield pass. I kind of think at times he's playing it a bit safe, but I do like that because he doesn't force it. What have you made of Declan Rice so far in the Arsenal shirt?
I think not only is he getting better, but I think he's just growing in confidence. And that's what it is. I think he's got the quality naturally. It's just about you growing in confidence game by game and understanding that I'm that guy they spent £100 million on. I am that guy. But I don't think he wants to mention that too often. And it's because the moment you understand that £100 million, you can deep it too much and overthink stuff. And I think right now he's keeping it simple. And that's exactly what I want from the player.
Stu, what got you here, innit?
Yeah, I think with him, is he a Enzo Fernandez type of ping the ball forwards? He can do it, but not as good as, or not as consistent as him. But Rice has been brought into Arsenal because we've already got a player like that, like Thomas Partey, who's very, very aggressive with his passing. And it's good to have a player that just sets a tempo, keeps it tipping, keeps the team moving along. And so when you've got the progressive players elsewhere, I don't think we need Rice to be too expansive right now, but he has it in his locker. And I think the most important part about Rice, which has impressed me the most, is his defensive ability. Think about the amount of times teams will try to counter-attack or whatever, and Rice is just there, and he just
that transition where he clamped Bernardo Silva last week, 2 weeks ago.
That's why Rice is a £100 million player in terms of physique. His physique is just so good, and that what makes him so special is he can make a situation that's against him in his favour, just because he's got the natural power, and that's what you pay the money for. So Rice, I can see the signs, and I think he's growing, and the fact that he's playing as a 6 and as an 8 at the same time, he will make our team better. And I think it would probably take till October, November, but not even that. I think the fans love him from the get-go. I think being in the Community Shield, luckily, I can see that the fans, every time he made a challenge, the fans are on it. The Rice baby after. He's already a darling for the fans. And seeing that video,
man can't even drive out of the Emirates.
Seeing that video, now if that was my car, I'm a bit like, yo, listen, man, it's an expensive car.
Chill out a bit, yeah.
But I think he's enjoying life, and I can see it. The North London Forever charts, and the fact that he's singing that, he's loving life, and it's good to see that as a fan.
For me, why I rate Rice is because I think he's mature enough. And what I mean by that is, whether he matches his price tag or not, that he didn't pay that money, I can't control it. I like the way he speaks. You have to keep doing what got you in the door at Arsenal, which was obviously what you're doing at West Ham. As you can see, Mikel Arteta is molding him as a player. As he said, don't just judge me on 2 weeks. People don't look at real life examples. If you start a new job, let's just say you're the best graphic designer, for example, but you've got a certain way of doing things. You go work for another company. You're still going to be lit at your role, but they might ask you to tailor things in a certain sort of way. So it's going to take you a time to kind of learn them processes, to adapt to the working culture, etc. So I've got no problems about Rice. You can see why Rice has been brought in, clearly, because a bit like Thomas Partey, he makes other players play better because he's a bit of a safety net. The man's a leader. Like, not that I want Odegaard to ever relinquish his captaincy or be sold, but that's a captain. Obviously, he's multifunctional, whether that's a 6 or developing 8. You don't really want to see him play centre half, but any messing about, if needs must, he can play there. So I've got complete confidence in Rice. I think when you looked at all of the signings, I said when they all signed, I think Timber's a bit underrated by Arsenal fans purely because they probably ain't been exposed to him. Nobody's watching Dutch League week in, week out. Rice is going to be a hit. It's not to bring this back about Havertz, but Havertz is the one you're like, oh, okay, Arteta, because for me with Havertz, I wouldn't have signed him, but I can see why the gaffer signed him. As you said, his metrics off the ball, definitely not lazy. I think one thing that he's not really being given credit for, and it will sound dumb to some people, but he makes a lot of fouls. And that's something that I felt we definitely needed to do when we conceded against Nottingham Forest. We needed to make that foul. On that, I don't know how you feel, and I'm not asking Arsenal to eradicate all the errors already, but on the transitions was a problem last season, even in games we've won. Obviously in pre-season against Monaco, against City, against Man United, against Barcelona. Ultimately, it followed against Nottingham Forest in a game which I agree with what you said at the start. We should have really killed that in the first half, created more chances because we capitalised on them not clearing their lines. Great from Saliba and Saka and Martinelli and Eddie, respectively. So yeah, man, where are you at with the transitions? Because I still think the game management were a bit naive and that goal didn't really need to happen, really, did it?
No, it didn't. And I think it's a bit sloppy at times. It's just concentration at times. But I will say one thing is Arteta's constantly making changes in that back four, and I can see why he's trying to understand his team and stuff, and he's trying to experiment in games that, look, this is a very important game, but Forest is a game that you're going to win regardless, hopefully at least, with the players that you have, especially
let's not jinx it. We got to play them again, Like,
yeah. But at home, especially at home, Emirates Stadium, thinking you can experiment here. But I think what we'll see against Palace is a team that he'll probably turn to more often, and I think what he's doing now is using this early part of the season to really, he's trying to obviously win games, but also make minor experiments to learn about his players, learn about how they can adapt into this team. But as we get to the latter part of the season, there will be less changes, and we will see a set team, a set back four at least. And when you're a defense, you need to have consistency there. You need to have the chemistry there, and you can't really build that if 1 week is Ben White right back, then it's Partey right back. So once Arteta settles on a back four that he thinks is comfortable, then I think we'll see that the changes help out, because you saw against Man City, I think we're very good defensively, and that was a setback four of White, Timber, Saliba and Gabriel. And so the back four is there, and I think the defending is there. It's just about little minor adjustments, and I think we'll be fine.
I'm so happy that someone else has said it, so I don't sound like a broken record. I think fans want it all the way. They want experiments, but they want stability. I think, as you said there's a time and a place for such people. And I think one big reason as to why our season was good last season, obviously we've got a lot of options. We didn't have much, but there was stability. As you said, nail on the head. Obviously, I know Gabriel was dropped, but you want to see Gabriel and Saliba, our first choice centre-back pairing. You want to full back, cool. Benjamin White, Zinchenko, you can kind of mess about. You want to see a fixated keeper. So I do like that. And I don't know how you feel, but I think fans can't have it both ways. They've said Arteta's fixated in his ways. Fair enough. I wouldn't say he necessarily done mad experiments against City, but he took a risk with Havertz. And definitely when we was chasing the game, he went for it. Against Nottingham Forest, I think Partey was playing like a right back, but he was in midfield a lot. So I think it weren't as crazy in theory as it happened in real time. And I think Arteta's trying. As you said, this is the time to kind of try that. As we play the Crystal Palaces, the Uniteds, the Cities, there's no real time for that. What did you make of Partey as a right back? Because that's another one. You look at social media, he was amazing, he was terrible. Me personally, I think it worked. Like you kind of said, Nottingham Forest probably respected us too much. They sat back. We was going to have the lion's share of possession. And I think Partey and Rice took it in turns, when to play right back, when to build up as a centre-back. Odegaard was probably slightly deeper. The only fixated player throughout that whole team really is Bukayo Saka, because you're the right winger. He comes off the line a lot. I think it was fine, but what did you make of that?
Yeah, I think it was fine for that game there, because Forest don't really press. So you don't really need to have as many players in the build-up phase, because they're not pressing, you can play out straight away. I think it works in certain games, and it's good to have that there. It's good to have an option where in certain games you don't have to play Ben White and Saliba, change up a little bit, make it a bit easier, and have different ways of playing. Because Pep Guardiola doesn't have the same team play. He has go-to players, certain players.
He shot me, played a back four against Burnley. I couldn't believe it. I ain't seen him do that for a minute.
There you go. You're always making changes, but that's why each player they have is so comfortable, because they've played enough minutes. That's why players obviously they leave there, but often they stayed as bench players as well, because they're always getting minutes, because they're always playing off the bench or they're coming into a starting 11. Last year Arteta had just a set 11, and it worked for him obviously because we're winning games. But at the latter part, he said himself, we became predictable. So to change that, you need to have different ways of playing, and I think Partey playing a right back is definitely that. And that's why I want to see more of Fabio Vieira, more of Smith Rowe. But fans, as you said, you can't really have it both ways, because when you play Fabio Vieira, he might not be Odegaard, and instantly fans are like, okay, he's not good enough, sell him. But you got to give him time, because he might be even better. He might, show himself to be, a different level if you give him time and patience. But patience in football is a virtue.
Like you said, patience is a virtue, and I would love for everyone to get opportunities. But fundamentally, this is a football team aspiring for us fans to win the league. And it's not to make it about Fabio Vieira, because I like him, but if he's going to play for 10 games, that could work, but it might have a knock-on effect of us ultimately not getting 3 points. Reality is, if Arteta does not get 3 points on the weekend, that's where all the questions are at. And as you know, I think last season, in other seasons, we done enough, regardless of the good, bad, and the ugly, to win the league. Unfortunately, you're playing this juggernaut in Manchester City with Pep Guardiola, where the margins for error are not really there. And not as you said, Arteta said we became a bit predictable towards the end of last season. And naturally, people are going to start to know what Arsenal's at. But this season is different. There's a degree of expectation. It's inverted fullbacks. You need to double up, triple up against Saka. You're starting to see the rotating movement. So if it can keep people guessing, why not? Now, with the greatest of respect to Nottingham Forest, I know it's not the biggest game, but Steve Cooper had to have been planning for what Arteta has typically gone with. Now you're seeing Partey there, you're seeing Havertz. It's a bit of a spanner in the works, really and truly. The only criticism I have of the Nottingham Forest game is that, you know, we played well. I don't think it's a game to critique and stuff. We just conceded unnecessarily, and we should have put the game to bed. We probably should have scored 3, 4, 5 goals, and better yet, created that. But we got the 3 points. It's something to build upon.